What if the past was never really gone? What if the stories we think we've left behind have been waiting, just out of sight, to come back and find us? This is a story of secrets buried within the pages of time, a story that will haunt you long after you've turned the last page. Emma Larson was a writer, lost in the noise of the world. Every day, she stared at a blank screen, hoping for inspiration that never came. She had dreams of becoming a renowned author, but all that surrounded her were empty words and failed attempts. Her life was a series of unfinished chapters, each one more frustrating than the last. And one rainy evening, as she walked home through the familiar streets, something strange happened. She stumbled upon a small, unmarked bookstore tucked away in an alley she had never noticed before. Curious, she stepped inside. The door creaked as it opened, and the warm glow of the store felt like a comforting embrace compared to the cold, stormy night outside. The air smelled of old paper and dust. It was as if the place had been untouched for years, a forgotten relic of the past. The shopkeeper, an elderly man named Mr. Archibald, stood behind the counter with a knowing smile. Ah, Emma Larson, he said, his voice soft and steady. I've been waiting for you. Emma froze. How did he know her name? He smiled, as if understanding her confusion. The books tell me many things, my dear. You're looking for a story, aren't you? He handed her an old book, its cover worn, its pages yellowed by time. The title, The Forgotten Pages, was etched in faded gold on the front. Something in her gut tugged at her. A strange sensation, as if this book was meant for her, a story she was destined to read. She took it, paid for it, and left the shop. As she stepped back into the rain, the store seemed to fade from her memory, leaving behind only the weight of the book in her hands. Back in her apartment, Emma opened the book. The first few pages were filled with words that seemed ordinary enough, stories of love, betrayal, and loss. But as she read on, something strange began to happen. The pages started to change. They no longer described mere stories. They began to describe her own life, her thoughts, her memories. She read about a woman who had lost her way, a woman whose name echoed in her mind, Lillian. Her grandmother, the woman she had never known. The deeper Emma read, the more the book seemed to know her, the more it predicted the next thing she would do. And then she began to hear whispers. At first, they were soft, like a voice carried on the wind. But soon, they became louder, clearer, always in her mind when she opened the book. It was as if the pages themselves were speaking to her. The whispers told her of a family secret, a dark history, a betrayal that had haunted her bloodline for generations. Emma couldn't stop reading, even as the words became more chilling. The book told her of a curse, a tragedy that had caused her grandmother to disappear, a tragedy that seemed to pull Emma into its web. The more she investigated, the more she began to understand. The bookstore wasn't just a place of forgotten stories. It was a place where the past and the present collided, where memories were stored and sometimes forgotten lives were kept alive. Emma's journey led her to places she never thought she'd go, old libraries, dusty archives, and streets she had never noticed. Everywhere she turned, the past seemed to catch up with her. Faces from her family's history began to reappear, each one linked to the book. And the closer she got to the truth, the more she realized she was being watched. The whispers grew louder, and her nights were filled with strange dreams, dreams of her grandmother, of lost love, of betrayal. She came to learn that the bookstore had been founded on a family secret, a curse tied to the betrayal of her own ancestors. The story she read wasn't just any story. It was her story, one that had been forgotten, one that had been left unfinished. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when Emma learned that she wasn't just reading the past. She was reading her own future. Her grandmother, Lillian, had been the last to read the book before she disappeared. Emma realized she was destined to face the same fate. In a desperate attempt to understand what was happening, Emma returned to the bookstore. She confronted Mr. Archibald, demanding answers. But he wasn't the man she thought he was. He was the keeper of forgotten souls, a man who had lived for centuries, bound by the book's curse. He told her the truth. The bookstore had always existed as a gateway, not just for stories, but for the souls of those trapped within its pages. And Emma's own fate had already been sealed. She was tied to this place, to this curse. The bookstore had been waiting for her, for someone to finish the story and free, or trap, those who had been lost. Emma's heart raced as she understood what she had to do. To break the curse, to free herself, she had to finish the story. She had to write the final chapter. The walls of the bookstore began to crack as the storm raged outside. Time itself seemed to bend, as if the past was fighting to hold on. But Emma, determined, took the book in her hands, and as she wrote the last words, she felt the weight of her choice. She had to decide, would she rewrite history and save herself, or would she make the ultimate sacrifice? The room began to shake violently as the bookstore seemed to collapse around her, the final chapter being written in flames. When the smoke cleared, Emma stood alone on the empty street. The bookstore had vanished, and the only thing left in her hands was the book, a book now completely blank. The sun rose, casting a soft glow on her face, and for the first time in a long time, Emma felt free. But the question remained, was she truly free? Or had she merely been written out of the story? And if so, who would remember her? Some stories are meant to be forgotten, but some stories are meant to be remembered forever. If your story gave you chills, do like and subscribe for more mind-bending stories. Thank you.